What does Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 hide off camera in the school and Miss Delight chase sequence? After falling victim to a digitized Huggy Wuggy and meeting with an unexpected duo, Ollie instructs the player to enter the school next, since CatNap typically avoids it. Of course, by the time they mention the killer educator lurking within, it's just a bit too late. Today we're taking a look out of bounds in search of things you're not usually meant to see, like this fully intact, slightly less horrifying Miss Delight. We'll also be breaking some stuff during the chase with Miss Delight, so I hope you enjoyed today's look behind the scenes at Poppy Playtime Chapter 3. As usual, I'll recap this area so we're all refreshed on what we'll be covering. So after plugging in Home Sweet Home's power cable, we're express mailed a key by Ollie that provides us access to the school. Entering the front door, Ollie informs us that we're not alone, just before the signal is cut and we lose contact with them completely. Miss Delight can be spotted strutting across the hallway in front of us, and after placing the required batteries in this outlet, we can head deeper into the school. We spot Miss Delight once again as we crawl through a vent, and when we drop down into this office and head through a gate, the room containing the generator becomes accessible. As it's powered on, Miss Delight smashes it to pieces with a 5-minute craft mace before ultimately giving chase. We must then navigate the school's hallways in search of an exit, never taking our eyes off our terrifying pursuer. After completing a puzzle that contains even more batteries, she chases us down this massive hallway, where we pull a lever and, crush her spirits. We can then grab the orange hand, which leads us into the caverns. Heading back to the start of this level, we can brighten things up and have a closer look at this massive school location. This area is pretty large, and what immediately caught my eye was this massive, rusty structure on the far side of the map. It's typically too dark inside this area to see anything not being illuminated by the orange hand's flares, but it is a fully modeled room inside. One of the first things we'll do is climb through the vents to acquire a battery, and we'll see that there are some sections blocked off by these grates. When moving the camera inside, you'll see that they come to an end just out of sight. Before we enter these vents though, we'll have our first encounter with Miss Delight. She casually walks by, and by the time we reach her, she is nowhere to be seen. With the camera placed on the other side of this hallway, I trigger this sequence once more, and in doing so, we'll see that she loads in just out of the player's view in this classroom's doorway. After moving past the wall here, she will be unloaded. This sequence plays out pretty quickly, as to ensure the player cannot see her unloading. On my first playthrough, I actually missed this walking sequence altogether, as it occurs whether or not you're looking in the right direction. A bit further ahead, we'll have another encounter with Miss Delight, this time appearing quite briefly as she walks past a locked door in front of us. With the camera in the hallway, we can watch as she loads in frozen in an A pose before she begins walking forward with not a care in the world, clipping through the janitor's cart like it's not even there. In the very next room, we climb into the vents again, this time on the complete opposite side of the map. As we crawl our way to freedom, Miss Delight will walk beneath us in the same direction as the vents exit, making for one heck of a don't make me do it moment. There was never anything to worry about though, since we can clearly see that she immediately vanishes after passing us by. This subtle scare actually leads us to the final chase, where the generator is sabotaged using the world's most lethal stationery, and I was really curious how this cutscene functions off camera. But before diving into the final chase, I want to talk about something I found just beyond the walls of the generator room itself. Well, technically just above the ceiling. Floating directly above this area, we'll find not one, but two versions of Miss Delight. On the left, there is the model used within the school itself, and here we can view it up close in all its glory. Their face is pretty badly torn up, and in their hand, they're wielding a mace that seems to be made of pencils, rope, and a measuring stick. Their eyes will also follow the camera, which scores them extra points on the creepy scale. Just beside this model, there's a completely intact version of the same character, and they're definitely a little easier to look at. She has a huge grin on her face, and she's much less detailed than her freaky counterpart, which makes her look far more toy-like in comparison. Her apron is missing the logo on the front, and her dress lacks the white polka dots as well. I'm a bit puzzled as to why this particular model is stored up here, since to my knowledge, it does not appear within the game itself. If you know why this model is here, let me know in the comments. This disheveled model, on the other hand, is actually used for the final chase, which we can view from a different angle as it is triggered. So as soon as we power the generator on, a separate model is loaded in behind the door and will enter the room as the lights flicker. She approaches the generator and smashes it with the mace, where the battery is then loaded in as it is sent flying. We can now see that the model previously stored out of bounds has been moved into the map and will now chase us down endlessly. Now, I immediately want to take a look at what happens when we turn our back on Miss Delight. She clearly took a page out of SCP-173's book and will only pursue us when she is out of sight. That means not only when our back is turned, but also when our view of her is obstructed by walls or even objects within the map. We'll be exploring this further in just a bit, but for now I slowed her AI down to a crawl, meaning we can take our time moving forward, which makes things a lot less stressful. After completing each of the necessary puzzles, I reached the end of the level, which means we can have a closer look at this hallway. As we enter the final stretch of the chase, Miss Delight will follow us down this narrow corridor, and a lever must be pulled to close the gate on top of her. There are actually a few interesting things that take place here. For starters, as we first step foot into this hallway, we'll see that Miss Delight instantly warps past the gate and continues her assault. Well, she would if we didn't have her moving at a snail's pace. It's kind of odd because even when playing through this area regularly, you can see this taking place if you simply turn around before passing through the doorway. So after grabbing the lever, I moved the camera into the hallway, and upon pulling it, Miss Delight shifted into maximum overdrive, even though her AI was still set to move as slow as possible. The reason for this is because the moment we pull the lever, a separate animation begins where she sprints to the door, reaching it just in time to be crushed. Miss Delight doesn't even have to be chasing you for this death sequence to take place. We can actually warp the player to the end of the level before starting the generator, and although we have no killer teachers in tow, the moment we pull the lever, she'll still load in, sprint at us, and get squished. We can also watch this animation play out in bullet time, which is pretty gruesome. At this point, I decided it was time to break some stuff. First, we can look through this vent near the school's entrance, where we can see the generator room is just beyond this gray door. Miss Delight actually enters the room through the same door after we power the generator on. Only we are incapable of passing through it when she does. She just clips through us as she walks inside, and an invisible barrier blocks us from exiting. I didn't feel like collecting batteries this time around, so I deleted the door she enters from, and once activated, I slipped past her and made a sprint for the front door. She was able to follow me all the way up until I exited the school, but upon re-entering, the map was reset, and I had to start over from the beginning. What's interesting is that after starting over, we can delete the door to the generator room from the outside this time, and immediately trigger the final chase. Something I hadn't noticed until now was this map's exit is actually a straight shot from the generator room. Meaning, if we delete each of the gates that block our path, we can walk in a straight line all the way to the level's exit. I once again pulled the lever to crush Miss Delight, and then deleted the gate itself, which allowed me to walk back into the facility. Only now, there are no deadly teachers in sight. We can explore this part of the map freely, which is pretty cool, considering we don't have much time to take in the sights during regular gameplay. Resetting this map once again, I was curious what would happen if we completely removed the generator altogether. After nuking this giant piece of machinery, I activated Miss Delight, which resulted in her entering the room, and, breaking it anyway? She is a terrifying teacher, but a super impressive mime. The battery still loads in and flies out onto the floor, and the rest of the section plays out as expected. Next, I wanted to test Miss Delight's pathfinding ability to see where we were and were not safe within this map. I moved the player inside this fenced-off corner of the generator room, and whether I was looking at her or not, she was now incapable of moving. It seems that she can only move throughout this location when she has a direct path to the player. Otherwise, she'll remain frozen in place since her logic has been broken. The second that I deleted a segment of this fence and turned around, she began approaching me once more. We could also lead her back to the start of the level and grapple into the vents, which saves us from her wrath indefinitely. Only, we will have to come back down eventually. The only way we can guarantee she won't come back is to remove her from the facility once and for all. So I removed 2 segments of the ground in front of the door, which resulted in her hovering over this pit as she destroyed the generator. And the moment the pursuit began, she dropped down to the endless void below, and her animation sped up exponentially as she did. Finally, I wanted to see if I could complete this level if I shrunk the player down to the size of a mouse. Heading around the first bend in the school, we typically spot Miss Delight as she runs by, but because we have to crouch underneath this barricade, she is gone by the time we reach her. However, since we're so small now, we can run directly below it without stopping and catch her before she unloads. After heading into the vent and dropping down for the battery, I realized just how small we really are. This thing is massive compared to us. We also have another sighting with Miss Delight up ahead, and given our size, we can sprint through the vents and catch her unloading here as well. Now for most of this level, it went pretty smoothly, but when reaching the final chase, things got a bit more interesting. As she destroyed the generator, I slipped through the opening and hid behind it, which resulted in her AI losing the ability to form a complete path to the player. As I moved around back here, she managed to get a bit closer, but she's incapable of getting past the generator, meaning we're completely safe as long as we stay behind it. I then hid beneath a shelf on the far side of the room, and after a pretty close call, I bolted for the door. Navigating this facility is somehow even scarier when you're the size of a mouse, as it's a lot easier to lose your way when the doorways and furniture tower above you. As I entered the final puzzle, I grabbed the first battery from the chair and used it to snag the second. Unfortunately, because we are so small, carrying a battery in one hand blocks our ability to use the other, so I had to drop it in order to retrieve the battery from the slot. And as I did, it just kind of vanished. I looked around this area for a little while, only to lose a second battery the same way. It turns out because of the player's current size, when the batteries are dropped, there's a chance it just clips to the ground and falls indefinitely out of bounds. And when moving the camera beneath the map, we can see our only hope of escape as it falls further and further out of reach. And with that, that's everything I found hidden off camera in the school and Miss Delight chase scene in Chapter 3. There's still a ton of interesting things we've yet to cover, so make sure you're subscribed. That way, you'll be notified when my next video is released. Thanks for watching, and cheers.